hood comes off beneath a merciless white light. Elian Voss, 24, is strapped to a metal chair while sensors record his breathing, pulse, and perspiration. The examiner already knows his history. The real question is how he behaves under pressure. Polygraphs do not literally detect lies, and their reliability remains disputed. Yet in this room, uncertainty itself is part of the test. Elian is fictional, a composite created to explore documented patterns rather than describe one officer or agency. There is no universal ladder leading neatly from trainee to assassin, prison manager, and intelligence chief. Real services divide those duties among analysts, case officers, technical specialists, managers, and paramilitary personnel. Our journey combines those worlds to examine what secrecy, authority, and repeated compromise can do to one identity. His transformation begins with an ordinary conversation. At his mother's kitchen table, Elian claims he has accepted a routine defense job. He invents an office, a supervisor, and a tedious commute. Such cover stories vary greatly, but compartmentalization is fundamental to clandestine work. His mother smiles with pride. Elian smiles back, discovering that protecting a secret may require deceiving the people who trust him most. Training does not erase personality as dramatically as spy fiction suggests, but it can deliberately reshape habits. Recruits may study operational security, law, surveillance awareness, communications, source handling, and resistance to manipulation. They are taught to question coincidences and control what they reveal. For Elian, vigilance becomes automatic. A misplaced vehicle, an unfamiliar face, or a silent telephone call can no longer be dismissed as harmless. Physical instruction adds another layer. Elian runs on little sleep, practices emergency medicine, handles weapons under supervision, and repeats procedures until movement arrives before conscious thought. Programs differ according to role, and most intelligence employees never conduct armed operations. But for those entering dangerous assignments, repetition is intended to preserve judgment under stress. It can also create a troubling distance between action and reflection. The city becomes a classroom. Elian studies reflections in shop windows, changes direction without appearing evasive, and notes whether the same stranger reappears. Inside a hotel room, he checks obvious hiding places for surveillance equipment while understanding that sophisticated devices may remain invisible. The goal is not permanent paranoia, it is disciplined awareness. Elian, however, is beginning to lose the ability to switch that awareness off. One lesson concerns the motives used to recruit human sources. Intelligence literature often summarizes them as money, ideology, coercion or compromise, and ego, sometimes called mice. The mnemonic is imperfect, but the vulnerabilities are real. Debt can create desperation. Resentment can turn loyalty into anger. Vanity can make recognition feel irresistible. Fear can force cooperation, although coerced sources may provide unreliable information simply to satisfy their handlers. Elian learns to build detailed portraits from fragments: financial trouble, professional disappointment, family pressure, ambition, and belief. Ethical source handling requires judgment, validation, and limits. Still, the work can encourage a colder view in which people resemble locked containers, and vulnerability becomes the key. Each time Elian describes a person only by leverage, he makes the next compromise easier, and forgets something about the human being behind the file. This is where our composite career leaves normal institutional boundaries. Intelligence officers do not automatically advance by becoming progressively more violent. Analysts may spend entire careers assessing information. Case officers recruit and manage sources. Specialized units conduct high-risk operations under separate authorities. Elian's path represents accumulated power, not a standard promotion chart. Its purpose is to connect decisions that bureaucracies often separate among different offices, signatures, and chains of command. At 27, Elian joins a fictional raid in a country his government will not publicly discuss. He wears unmarked equipment and carries sanitized documents. Governments have historically used covert personnel, partner forces, and contractors to create distance from sensitive operations. That distance may protect diplomacy or personnel. It can also make accountability harder when missions fail, civilians are harmed, or officials deny involvement. The team enters a compound seeking records tied to an armed network. In a corridor, a frightened young guard raises an old rifle. Elian fires before he has time to interpret the face behind the weapon. The moment is legally and morally dependent on facts no distant narrator can settle. Threat, identification, rules of engagement, and proportionality. What matters to Elian is that a life has ended through his trained response. 11 minutes later, he is aboard the extraction aircraft with captured drives and a dark stain on one glove. He expects guilt to arrive as a dramatic collapse. Instead, he feels almost nothing. Emotional numbness can be an immediate response to trauma, not proof that conscience has vanished. But numbness is dangerous when an institution rewards it as professionalism. Elian mistakes the absence of feeling for mastery. Years later, his battlefield is a quiet hotel lounge. Across from him sits an indebted foreign official with access to restricted financial data. Human intelligence operations often develop slowly through assessment, relationship building, verification, and authorization. The cinematic suitcase of cash is only one possibility. The more important currency is trust, genuine, manufactured, or carefully confused until the source cannot tell the difference. Elian presents cooperation as rescue. The official's creditors can be paid, the family protected, and the immediate crisis ended. Nothing is described as betrayal. Every phrase narrows the available choices while preserving the appearance of consent. Skilled recruitment may rely on empathy, but empathy used instrumentally has a darker edge. Elian must understand the official's fear well enough to comfort him, and exploit that same fear well enough to control him. When the official finally transfers the data, Elian feels a surge of power. Yet sources are never possessions. They can lie, defect, misunderstand access, fabricate reports, or become double agents. Intelligence must be corroborated because a handler's confidence is not evidence. Elian knows this professionally. Emotionally, he prefers the fantasy that he has unlocked another human being. Control is becoming more satisfying to him than the information itself. Promotion moves Elian away from direct contact. He now reviews operations through briefings, legal memoranda, risk tables, and secure video links. Bureaucracy can restrain abuse by requiring multiple approvals and documented reasoning. It can also distribute responsibility so widely that no participant feels personally accountable. A harmful decision may arrive as a clean page containing neutral language, standardized boxes, and several signatures, including Elian's. The bleakest example is a detention program resembling those documented after the attacks of September 11th. Secret sites, prolonged sleep deprivation, stress positions, sensory manipulation, and waterboarding became subjects of investigations, litigation, and international condemnation. The United States Senate Intelligence Committee concluded that CIA interrogation practices were more brutal than represented, and that claims about their effectiveness were overstated. Other governments have faced related allegations and inquiries. In our fictional site, Elian is warned that a detainee may have been misidentified. The reports conflict, while pressure from headquarters demands actionable intelligence. Torture and cruel treatment are prohibited under international law, and information produced through extreme suffering can be false or contaminated. Elian nevertheless authorizes harsher measures behind legalistic phrasing. His pen never touches the prisoner, but the signature becomes part of the machinery inflicting pain. By his late 40s, Elian serves as a station chief under diplomatic cover. Such chiefs generally manage intelligence activity within a country, coordinate with headquarters, cultivate liaison relationships, and navigate local politics. They are not independent rulers with unlimited budgets. Their influence can still be substantial, especially where security partnerships, covert funding, and diplomatic pressure intersect. Every alliance forces questions about whom cooperation protects and what conduct it quietly tolerates. Covert action has included propaganda, political influence, support to armed groups, cyber operations, and efforts to shape foreign governments. Democratic systems typically require executive authorization and some form of legislative notification, though details are classified and rules vary by country. History shows that safeguards can fail. Short-term strategic gains may empower abusive partners, intensify conflict, or produce consequences that outlast the officials who approve them. Elian begins speaking about nations as if they were pieces on a board. Stability means preserving a cooperative ruler. Reform means replacing an inconvenient one. Civilian suffering appears in estimates rather than names, yet states are not chess pieces, and populations do not reset after an operation ends. Markets collapse, families flee, armed factions fragment, and old grievances acquire new weapons. Strategic language cannot contain the full aftermath of intervention. At 52, Elian watches thermal imagery from an aircraft operating far from its target. A suspected financier is traveling with family members. Remote systems can provide persistent surveillance and reduce danger to attacking forces, but they do not eliminate uncertainty or civilian harm. Identification standards, imminence, sovereignty, and proportionality remain fiercely contested. Distance may improve observation, while simultaneously making lethal force feel abstract to those authorizing it. Elian approves the fictional strike. A white flash replaces the vehicle. Afterward, the room returns to routine. The danger is not that technology automatically removes morality. It is that repeated exposure can turn death into workflow, coordinates, confidence levels, collateral estimates, confirmation. Operators and analysts may experience serious psychological strain despite their physical distance. Elian responds differently. He uses procedure as insulation until the people on screen become only heat signatures. Power also reaches beyond physical force. Intelligence organizations possess surveillance, financial, cyber, and influence capabilities, but legal authority and technical access vary. Used without restraint, such tools could freeze movement, expose private communications, or destroy reputations. Elian authorizes a campaign against a former insider threatening disclosure. The scenario is fictional, yet it reflects a real democratic danger. Secret institutions may be tempted to treat embarrassment as a security threat. Eventually, Elian faces legislators investigating a leaked surveillance program. Oversight hearings can expose misconduct, constrain budgets, and force legal reform. They can also be weakened by excessive classification, limited access, partisan incentives, or misleading testimony. Elian answers with carefully narrowed definitions and incomplete context. Every sentence is technically arranged to survive scrutiny while preventing the public from understanding the system being discussed. This does not prove the existence of an all-powerful deep state. Intelligence services are not seamless machines. They contain rival offices, changing leaders, legal advisors, auditors, whistleblowers, and ordinary employees. Elected governments still set policy and bear responsibility. The more realistic concern is structural. Secrecy creates information imbalances. Officials who know operations in detail can outlast political appointees and shape which choices appear possible. Elian now possesses extraordinary access, but access does not bring security. He checks his home for listening devices, studies friends for hidden motives, and interprets his wife's questions as attempts to extract information. Hypervigilance that once protected him becomes a private prison. Secrets have given him influence over others while making ordinary intimacy impossible. He can assess a foreign minister's vulnerability, yet cannot answer honestly when his family asks whether he is safe. Retirement offers no clean return to civilian life. Former intelligence officials may teach, consult, write within classification rules, or join corporate boards. The movement between government and defense industries can provide valuable expertise, but it also raises concerns about conflicts of interest and incentives favoring continued security spending. Elian accepts prestigious positions. His biography celebrates public service while omitting the decisions that still wake him at night. Age finally weakens the defenses that training built. Elian experiences tremors, insomnia, and intrusive memories. Clinicians use terms such as post-traumatic stress and moral injury to describe different wounds: fear caused by trauma, and anguish caused by violating or failing to prevent violations of deeply held values. Not every intelligence veteran suffers this fate. For Elian, the faces he converted into files return as people once more. At 72, Elian sits before a dying fire, surrounded by locks, medicine, and unanswered family messages. He helped preserve some lives, endangered others, and can no longer separate service from ambition. Far away, another recruit enters a bright examination room, believing secrecy will be a tool under personal control. Elian understands the final warning. Institutions shape those who serve them, but every signature still belongs to a person.